Paquito is not really that in and out sort of finisher like Galan was. And it almost feels like I think Paquito wants Lebrón to take more of the weight offensively, or at least have it like more distributed. Whereas Lebrón, on the other hand, seems like he wants Paquito to take it a bit more, like maybe he had it with Galan.
100% think that given that Paquito's playing style and natural ability at the back of the court and defending is unbelievable. I think he's one of the best players, if not the best, in terms of mastering the back glass, for example. And Lebrón is so fit and his lobs are so good. They could definitely become a pair that just sits at the back for a lot of the time, particularly when they're defending and they're returning serve. And then when there's the right moment, one of them plays the aggressive shot, and that's when they both move to the net. I don't think they have to go for that risky 1-2 shot interchange and then go for the net.
Yeah, for me, there were two major differences compared to the final in Venezuela. I think one, you've mentioned, I think Galán was absolutely sensational. But I think the other one was Tapia. I think Tapia was his worst match of the year. And to give you some stats, because these are like, people should honestly save this recording, because this might become historic, because you might never hear such bad stats of Tapia ever again. So he had 22 winners and 24 unforced errors, and his contribution score was actually -10. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Padel Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional padel, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 48, as always, joined by my co-host Hugo. It's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. I had a very intense week last week. Actually, finally managed to, as you know, get my driving license. So very, very happy about that. And yeah, I've been doing a special course, which I'll talk about in the following episode if it goes through and I pass it. But yeah, a good week overall, and just even better week because Padel is finally back.
Yeah, I mean, massive week for you, very productive. I do hope that you did manage to get to watch some paddle, which I'm sure you did make the time for it, because it was absolutely amazing.
You know, I always do.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me one bit. But we obviously just had the Premier Paddle P2 Brussels. Great, actually, to have the tournament, well, the Premier Paddle come to Europe for the first time this year. And wow, I mean, what a tournament. I think there's so many matches that we can go into. And let me just maybe start by saying that I felt like the level of the tournament was far better than the level we've seen so far this season. And I genuinely think is because it was the first time the paddle was played indoor. I think just has that massive difference. And this is actually a stat from Vianney, one of our good friend at Paddle Intelligence. And so the Premier P2 in Brussels was the tournament with the most points per match, which I think it just speaks to so far this year, which I just think it's sort of supports this argument that the level was so good, and we saw so many epic 3-set matches that yeah, it was an incredible tournament, and it was great to see that paddle, finally indoor, because I think the level is just a little bit better. I don't know, how do you feel about that, Hugo?
100% agree. I think, well, we already mentioned it in previous episodes, and it's pretty obvious that paddle always is at a higher level when it's played indoors versus outdoors, because of basically there's fewer factors that players have to take into account. It can be the sun in your eyes, the wind, etc., etc. So yeah, I totally agree. I thought the level was definitely the best tournament so far this season. What I am actually really surprised about is, because I do think that the level was 100% better and that the matches were better, but I'm really surprised that the best pairs struggled more, because when you think about it, what the professionals say and what people have said in the paddle world is that when they play outdoors, it basically evens the conditions. And so you would have expected that indoors it would have been the top pairs making the final rounds. Obviously, the top pairs did make the final, but there were a lot of surprises on the way. And I did feel like some of the top pairs probably played worse in comparison to what they had been doing previously. Maybe not worse, maybe it's the pairs that were slightly further down the pecking order played much better. So yeah, I'm quite surprised about that angle. I don't know whether you agree, Gons.
Yeah, I maybe it's also due to the fact that there's a lot of pair changes. So I generally think that, for example, like Momo and Alex, they sort of exited early against Lamperti and Belluati, who honestly had an amazing tournament, and maybe we can talk about them a bit later. But yeah, some of the pairs that sort of were higher seeds did have a bit of trouble. Even Coello Tapia, like all the way to the final, it was a bit of a bumpy road. It wasn't like so straightforward. But I generally think, like, for example, Lebrón and Paquito as well, new pair. And yeah, I just think that it was probably for these sort of lower ranked, because, for example, Garrido Yanguas were still up there and they've been there all season. Los Super Pibes still made semifinals, even though did they make no? Did they?
No,
Yeah,
it was the first time that they
yeah.
didn't
Actually, the first time they didn't
in a long
exactly.
time.
Sorry. Garrido and Yanguas beat them again in another great match. But yeah, it is actually quite surprising because, as you say, it's very true that players always do say that. They always say they prefer indoors, and they prefer indoors because outdoors normally evens out the conditions. So yeah, it is actually quite an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought about it right now, like in the moment. So it'd be good to get our listeners and our followers' thoughts on that because I think it kind of probably changes what people have traditionally said. But hey, we'll see. Maybe to kick off, well, going into more depth regarding the P2 in Brussels, Gons, maybe we could start with what was the biggest low light for you? Maybe let's change the order up. Let's, yeah, change the swing of things. What was the biggest low light for you?
Whew. It's a good question. Uh, I think my first gut is to say Momo and Ruiz. I honestly thought that they had an easy way, at least to the quarterfinals, and the fact that they lost to Lamperti and Belluati, who in the end actually did play quite well, and they could have they were very close to making it to the semi-finals because they even had two match points, I guess, Coello and Tapia. But yeah, I had a lot of expectations on them because I feel like when they were together, they sort of performed at their best, and I feel like their games haven't changed too much. So I would have thought that they would have had a much easier transition rather than other pairs. Like, for example, I feel like Paquito and Lebrón, and maybe we'll talk about them, but I feel like they will take some time to adjust from a paddle perspective. So yeah, I was definitely expecting them to make the quarterfinals, and it was a bit of a disappointment, to be honest.
Interesting. I mean, they would definitely be one of my shouts. I think it is true that was there a match against Lamperti and Belluati three tie breaks?
Yeah,
I think it
yeah,
was. So when it goes down to the line, it's tough. And to be fair, Lamperti and Belluati had two match points against the number ones in the world because they
yeah.
were literally a point away twice from beating Goya and Tapia. So I think that shows how well they played. So maybe that covers Ruiz and Momo a bit in my eyes. Funnily enough, I'm going to go for Paquito specifically
Interesting.
because, and as I say, Ruiz and Momo are definitely one of my lowlights. But I just felt that Paquito, when this week in Brussels, I just felt that he he looked like he wasn't at his best anymore. Suddenly, it suddenly like turned around, I didn't have that feeling with Lebrón. I know Lebrón was erratic at times and he had quite a few unforced errors. But for example, I'm trying to think who they played on their debut. Do you remember Gons? I think it's just slightly slipped my mind. Who do they play on their debut? Lebrón and Paquito. That first match. Well, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I can't remember right now, but basically, I thought that Lebrón carried the weight and managed to win that match himself. I didn't really feel that. Paquito was constantly shouting out loud, saying, "I can't believe how I'm making these mistakes." So, yeah, I just had the feeling that Paquito he was not generating many winners, and he was having a lot of unforced errors. And it seemed maybe he was a bit nervous, and I do understand that. Obviously, he's just started to play with one of the best forehand players in the world and one of the most charismatic players in the world, as is Lebrón. And there's obviously a lot of eyeballs on their partnership because a lot of people think that they could be the big alternative to Coello and Tapia. But
Okay.
yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
No, I was just saying, whilst you were speaking, I was looking up their first round match, and now I remember Chipi Munoz and Javi Garcia.
Correct. Hell of a partnership,
Yeah.
actually. I'm really excited to continue to watch Chippy and his partner, because I genuinely feel like I felt that Garcia,
Garcia.
his smash was sensational against Lebrón and Paquito. And Chippy is just that kind of really solid forehand player who's actually quite aggressive at the net. So excited for what's to come regarding their partnership. But yeah, I felt that in that match, it was Lebrón putting all the weight, and Paquito really wasn't generating much. And I also watched, obviously, the quarterfinals against Coki and John, which in my eyes was one of the best matches of the tournament. And again, I just felt that it was either Lebrón having to win the points and generating the assists for Paquito, or it wasn't really going to go their way. And I genuinely feel that was why they lost to Coki and John. So yeah, Paquito for me, big dip in form, and well, hopefully he can turn it around at home next week in Seville.
Yeah, I think there's an element there of nervousness of being paired up with LeBron, and I think Paquito's also like alluded to it in social media. The fact that playing with LeBron sort of like I think actually after their first match, when they won in 3 sets, so obviously it could have gone either way, and they lost the first set, so it didn't start so well. He sort of said something like, "Oh, like finally, the match done. Like we got the nerves out, we got the first game out. Now it should be like smooth sailing or something." So yeah, and I also did feel like he was definitely way more emotional than usual. Like he was honestly after every single point, like shouting at himself. And normally, at least with Chingotto, he was definitely, and even with Sanjo, he was just a bit more calm. Like he would get emotional in like the big important points, but even at just some random points, he would like let out like a big scream or something. And from a paddle perspective, it was interesting as well to see Lebrón at one of the changeovers, and I think this was this against Coki and John, I believe,
Yep, it was.
where Lebrón was sort of telling Paquito like, I need you to like, I'm preparing the point, and I need you to finish more, I need you to come more inside, and win the point. And I just think there's an element in sort of the paddle that they want to do that it will take some adjustment because Paquito is not really that in and out sort of finisher like Galan was. And it almost feels like I think Paquito wants Lebrón to take more of the weight offensively, or at least have it like more distributed. Whereas Lebrón, on the other hand, seems like he wants Paquito to take it a bit more, like maybe he had it with Galan. So it will be interesting to see their dynamic. I also felt like they used a lot the sort of the switch play quite a bit in terms of like even when serving, they already used that straight up. So on their first tournament, which I found surprising. I thought it was going to be a more of a situational type tactic, but it feels like they want to include it. And I think in the future it will be very good and interesting to see. But ultimately, I think it will just take more time than people expect. It's definitely a bigger transition than Galan going to Chingotto, because in any case, Galan was already the finisher. He was already taking more balls. Maybe he wasn't taking as many, maybe he wasn't finishing, but I don't see it as such a big transition going from Lebrón to Chingotto than Lebrons going from Galan to Paquito and being asked to do more, and not only being asked to do more, but being asked to then play on the left and then win the points on the left. Which, if you do, if you've trained like 5, 6 years on the right, it's just not that easy, right? I think at the professional level, we're speaking about margins, we're speaking about the tiniest of details. So it does matter for these players. And so I do think that their paddle, they've got the talent 100%. Like, I feel like they will adjust. Now the question comes, and this is for me the big if, and we've talked about this in the pair, is will they give each other the time, right? Will their heads not clash? Will they be calm and cool about it? And will they invest the time into this adjustment? Because, you know, if they continue and they don't feel good and they start getting a bit emotional, then that's when the real sort of questions come to light, and that could be a bit rocky. And I'm not sure how they will handle the situation.
I do agree. I think to counter you on that, I do think that their heads could turn if a great player becomes available. But are they going to find a better partner than each other? Right now, I just don't see it, because Chingotto and Galán, obviously, they wouldn't split, and because Lebrón wouldn't go and play with Galán again, at least not in the short term, I don't think. So it would either be the superlative splitting, which, to be fair, who knows? Maybe that could happen at some point. But if not, they, in terms of the level, they'd go for a partner that's further down in terms of level. So that's the only reason why I think they will stick together, at least for the season, unless, as I say, a top player becomes available. But yeah, I totally agree. I think they have the talent. But regarding the switch play, I just do not think that it's going to be a good option for them 90% of the time. We've already seen that Paquito has tried to play on the right, and it's been a horrible experience. I mean, he literally said it himself. He's like 2 seconds late to every ball. He can't generate the winners. Obviously, he depends a lot on his backhand volley if he plays on the forehand, and everyone knows that Paquito's backhand volley is his weakest shot. He literally says it publicly. So yeah, I just don't think it makes any sense, to be honest. So yeah, I don't really see why they're doing it now. Maybe in the future, if you've trained it a lot and you suddenly see that it's really beneficial, fair enough. But right now, Lebrón, he's been the number one player in the world on the forehand side of the court for 5 years, more or less. Stick to that, at least in my eyes. And Paquito, again, he's been playing some of the best paddle that he's ever played on the backhand. Stick to it. You've got a great partner next to you. Why do you have to look for some random, switch over? And also at random times, not even like, okay,
Yeah.
what we'll do is that, yes, we'll switch over when Lebrón is serving so that we basically cover the diagonals, but the rest of the time, Paquito's on the left. No, it's more like some games, yes, some games, no. So chaotic. I personally, I just don't really get it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I definitely do think that it's way more effective to have the switch play in game, right? And you have like someone step in when the other person is expecting the ball, because that's when you sort of create the element of surprise. I do feel like there wasn't, and it was interesting because there wasn't, I didn't feel, at least in the changeovers, there was no discussion about this with Ovide, with the coach. So yeah, I just wonder if he had any input at all into this, or was it just Paquito and Lebrón sort of saying like, yeah, let's just switch it up, or I don't know, did they have it like already established pre-match? But in any case, it just didn't seem that effective. And I think, as you say, like LeBron's been the number one world, like he's been the number one player in the world in the on the right hand side for so many years. And Paquito's proven he can definitely be a top player on the left. So I just feel like they just need to find what they really want, and their sort of playing style. I don't think that they need to go so great, like so crazy on this switch play, especially in sort of like they should basically use it more in game rather than like actually planning like, okay, you're serving and then we switch sides. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but I do think that from a paddle perspective, I mean, I'm not that worried about them. I do think that they'll adjust.
No, I definitely agree. And 2 points from my side just to finish off the Paquito Lebrón discussion and topic. One, I definitely think that it's Lebrón literally walking onto the court and saying, Paquito, let's switch it up now. Because Paquito would never say that, because Paquito's not going to want to play on the forehand side. Makes no sense. And they obviously haven't mentioned it on the bench. So, and it happened at random times. So it just feels like it's a Lebrón special. And two, going back to that point you mentioned around Lebrón and Paquito having that kind of half argument on the bench, with Lebrón asking Paquito to basically push forward more and be more aggressive and just push to the net and basically take more risks and go to the net quicker. And Paquito was saying, I don't think that that's actually going to help us that much. Rodrigo Vide actually backed Paquito and said, Lebrón, think about the last 2 times that we've broken their serve. How did that happen? Being patient, playing from the back. I 100% think that given that Paquito's playing style and natural ability at the back of the court and defending is unbelievable. I think he's one of the best players, if not the best, in terms of mastering the back glass, for example. And Lebrón is so fit and his lobs are so good. They could definitely become a pair that just sits at the back for a lot of the time, particularly when they're defending and they're returning serve. And then when there's the right moment, one of them plays the aggressive shot, and that's when they both move to the net. I don't think they have to go for that risky 1-2 shot interchange and then go for the net. I don't really think that that's going to be very beneficial for them. So yeah, but moving on to the main highlights, if you want, Gons, I'll kick off with one of the big ones for me. And obviously it's Yanguas and Garrido once again. Now, it almost feels like it's not a highlight anymore because they've made us they've accustomed to getting to the semi-finals and also beating the superlative, because this is the second time they've beaten them this season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, sensational. And once again, in particular for me, Yanguas, in that match against the Tuba and Dineno, there was a crucial game in the third set where Yanguas literally won 4 points pretty much by himself because Garrido actually missed 2 smashes. So, yeah, it just feels like mentally right now he's at a really, really strong point and stage, probably helped a lot by Juan Mieres, obviously ex-number 1 player, and constantly working with Yanguas. I feel like he's got a really, really strong mentality at the moment, and he really believes in his game, which obviously we know how important believing in your game is in paddle in particular. I think it's an incredibly mental sport. So yeah, great to see them making the semi-finals once again. And to be honest, even though they lost in 2 sets against Coello and Tapia, I did feel that match could have easily gone to a third set. It was very even. So yeah, once again, hats off. Garrido and Yanguas, what a performance.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think I completely agree with you. They've definitely been the sort of best pair out of the sort of top ones, and arguably even better than if we look at the current pairs that there are. They're probably in the third best pair. Like I'd say, I would put them in front of Los Superpibes, to be honest, because they've got the better head-to-head record. They've made the final of a major. Superpibes haven't. So honestly, absolutely amazing start. Both Yanguas and Garrido. I think and it's to me it just seems like they're here to stay. If you see what I mean, like it doesn't feel like it's a sort of you're getting into a hot streak and it's just gonna cool off and they'll drop off. Like it does feel like they've now got that mentality, and yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of work going into that. We know how obsessed Garrido is with his fitness and like I'm sure Yanguas is as well. So yeah, it seems like they've got a great team behind, and really exciting as well that they're sort of 2 young players So yeah, I mean, future is looking very bright for them, and I do see them being that sort of best of the top, or sort of best of the rest, if you will, pair. And let's see if they can win a title. But yeah, massive. I think that they were one of my key highlights as well. And then another one that I'd maybe like to mention is, of course, Coki and John. I think they've also had like an incredible tournament, arguably won the best match of the tournament that we just briefly discussed. So against Paquito and Lebrón, I thought especially Coki was like honestly ridiculous. I think is the sort of the best paddle I've seen him play. Gonna give you some quick stats from our friends at Intelligence, sorry, but
Yes, please.
23 winners and 5 unforced errors. I mean, that is just like outstanding for a player that doesn't, or you wouldn't imagine that generates so many winners, is absolutely amazing. In terms of contribution score, so he had a total net rating of plus 25. And if you remember, contribution score just either sums essentially the player's contribution to a match, awarding positive points for winners or giving assists to your teammate, but also subtracting if you have an unforced error, for example. So the fact that he ended on plus 25, I mean, way
That's
ahead
really
of,
interesting.
yeah, so like way ahead of John Sanz, for example, and the best player out of the four in that particular match. So yeah, absolutely sensational, and they've both been sort of getting better and better, I feel, as the season has gone on. So yeah, big shout out to them. And then I obviously also didn't want to like leave this section without giving a massive shout out to Miguelito Lamperti and Belluati. I mean, absolutely sensational. To be honest, I was quite excited when they sort of got back together, because I feel like they're two very funny characters. I think their persona, like they're just very lovable, and together they're so like they make quite a nice pair. And Belluati is actually, his hand is crazy. Like some of the touches are insane. Like some of the points against Coello and Tapia were ridiculous. And then Lamperti has had an incredible start to the year. Actually, he's won 8 matches, he's lost 5, so that's quite a decent record. I think it was the first time in over a year that he made a quarterfinal, or as they like to say, Los Viernes de Lamperti. So yeah, massive shout out to them as well.
Yeah, I thought Lamperti's smashing against Coello and Tapia was unbelievable. Key
Yeah,
points, he was going for a smash and managing going for smashes against Tapia and Coello is probably the hardest thing you can do in life. I mean, they are two of the best, well, counter attackers on smashes because Tapia, we know how good he is, and Coello is just the tallest player out there. So sensational. And as you say, Belluati, there was that one point at the net, the four of them at the net, and he did
yeah,
this up like on the bounce with his wrist, like turning a hand round, and then he actually decided to play a cross court backhand shot onto the metallic mesh. Unbelievable.
yeah.
Even Goyo and Dabia just literally stood there and applauded. So yeah, definitely a big highlight for me as well. And well, I mean, I think the other main one should probably be the winners of the tournament,
Of course,
Galan.
of course.
Now, if you, well, to be honest, I think I do know your answer. Who's the MVP for you?
Galan, without a doubt.
Yeah, I I mean the stats from Galan, it was something like 30 something winners and something stupid like 10 unforced errors, something around that.
Yep, let me get it right now because
But
I've got it
yeah,
here. 32 winners, 18 unforced
yeah,
errors.
there we go. But I mean, compared to the other stats from Goya and Chingotto and Tapia, wow, just through the roof. I thought, yeah, I think in particular what I saw from Chingotto and Galan in this match that potentially I didn't see in Venezuela, and totally normal. Venezuela was the first tournament they'd played together. They were much better at picking the moments when Galan would cross into Chingotto's side of the court and go for the winner. And there were a lot of moments when Chingotto was having to pull his own weight. And to be fair, makes total sense because Chingotto right now is playing the best paddle of his life. And he was managing to sometimes beat Coello in that cross-court battle, which we see a lot in paddle. Obviously, as you can imagine, a lot of points are played on the cross court, and he was managing to his bibora was causing real havoc in Coello's game. So yeah, I thought Chingotto was really, really good. And to be fair, I did think that the final could have gone either way, to be honest. In that the start of the third set, Tapia and Coello could have broken Chingotto and Galan's serve, and maybe that would have been enough to kill them mentally. Because just to remind our listeners and for those who didn't watch it, Chingotto and Galan had, if I'm not mistaken, 5 match points in the second set, and Coello and Tapia managed to turn it round and win the tiebreak to take it to the third set. So, yeah, what a final! I think, is it the best final of the year? Maybe in terms of actual level of play, because I do think that it was really, really good, particularly given that, as you already mentioned, it was indoor. But yeah, Galan once again through the roof. I mean, the amount of winners that this guy can generate from
Yeah.
balls that someone else wouldn't attack is just unbelievable.
Yeah, for me, there were two major differences compared to the final in Venezuela. I think one you've mentioned, I think Galan was absolutely sensational, but I think the other one was Tapia. I think Tapia was his worst match of the year. And to give you some stats, because these are like people should honestly save this recording because this might become historic because you might never hear such bad stats of Tapia ever again. So he had 22 winners and 24 unforced errors, and his contribution score was actually negative 10. So I think that just shows you no one else in the match ended with a negative contribution. Now, I've actually never seen Tapia have a negative contribution, and definitely never more unforced errors than winners. So I think the fact that it took Galan this massive effort to win, I mean, to me, it also speaks volumes about Coello and Tapia. Like when they are good, they're just like almost unbeatable because I mean, I don't know how many other times we're going to see Tapia play at this level, to be honest, because it was the first time that I've sort of seen the stats. And even during the game, you could see like the reason why they had the 5 match points, to be honest, for me, was because Tapia just was like throwing it away. Like that game where they had the 3 match points, low 40 for Chingotto and Galan, and Tapia basically threw those like points away. He made it low 40, and then Coello was like, okay, actually, I want to continue playing. And Coello played amazing. He had an incredible final. But but yeah, I don't know if there was an element of tiredness or just unmotivated. There was at times as well where they both felt sort of uncoordinated. Like so many times when they were getting the smash back, Coello actually bumping into Tapia. I've never seen that before. So I don't know if there was like something going on there. But yeah, for me, the fact, I mean, Tapia played horribly and Galan played really well, and that's essentially what made the final. Because then Coello played really well also, and Chingotto played quite good match. So yeah, I think those for me were the key things.
I've got to be honest, I was really surprised to read those stats from Tapia because I did think that he was making a lot of unforced errors compared to what he usually does. Obviously, he's used to being the best player on the court, or pretty much in every match. But yeah, I did think that he was committing a lot of unforced errors. But I've got to be honest, there are a lot of moments in the match, particularly towards the beginning of the match in the middle, where I felt that Tapia was having to go for the risky shots because every time that Coello was facing Chingotto in that cross court, he was losing the battle. So Tapia was having to go for these shots and obviously having to play Galan on the cross court, who currently is the most informed player in the world. He was having to take that risk. Being honest, I did think there were a lot of smashes on behalf of Coello that he left short, and Chingotto and Galan were managing to counterattack. So I did think that I do think that overall Coello had a better match than Tapia, don't get me wrong, but I'm really surprised to see such negative stats from Tapia because during the match, even though he had a lot of forced errors, I didn't think that he was having that bad a match. So, well, it just shows maybe I don't know enough about Padel, which could very much be the case. But I also think, and this is not to say anything against stats and, well, Padel Intelligence's stats, which are obviously, well, are golden nuggets, to be honest. But I do think that sometimes stats can be misleading because maybe given that they're still very much in their infancy, there are elements of the game that they don't take into account. Maybe one player's, okay, he's had a lot of enforced errors because he's having to take the risky shots because his teammate is not generating as many winners, or he's seeing that his teammate, say that Tapia is seeing that Coello is struggling a lot. Maybe they talk on the bench and the coach says, Tapia, you've got to go for it because we've got to change basically the course of the match. So I'd want to take those stats with a pinch of salt because I didn't think that his game was that bad, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the how to sort of the contribution score of each player as sort of the match went on, and we'll show this for our listeners. So Tapia started off the match well, and then he started sort of dropping off in sort of the second set, and it sort of goes the opposite for Coello. Coello early on wasn't as great, but then as sort of the match went on, he was really, really, really good. And then Tapia just sort of dropped off. So yeah, there's elements of I agree with you. Maybe at the beginning of the match when Coello wasn't as good, Tapia and Tapia was good. Maybe he was seeing that he was the one that sort of needed to sort of create more, put it out there more, be more risky. But then that sort of Coello then actually did like become pretty productive. And then Tapia just I guess maybe couldn't get out of that. But yeah, I mean to be fair, Coello ended the match with 24 winners. So it's a decent amount, 10 unforced errors. So he was very good. I mean, I think especially when they had the whole issue with the referee, it almost felt like both of them got re-engaged to the match, and they were like, okay, now we're gonna win this because like what the hell has just happened? Like this is like complete BS, and it almost felt like that was like driving them, and they had an incredible like end of like run of the second set. And then the third set, it sort of died off a bit, but yeah, I mean, nonetheless, it was I mean, they both. I'm just not sure that we'll ever see Tapia have like a match like this. To be honest, from a stats perspective, sorry,
From a
because
stats perspective, I definitely agree.
yeah, exactly. But in any case, I mean, it was still an incredible final, and like I said, one of the takeaways for me was if this is like how bad they have to play for them to for the others to win, and you know they push them so hard to win, like Galan and Chingotto really had to fight for this. It just like speaks so much of you know the current level that the Goya and Tapia are at the moment.
100%. I totally agree. And to be fair, I think we have probably discussed pretty much everything that there is to discuss regarding Brussels. I don't know whether there's anything that you think you wanted to cover a little bit in more depth.
Well, I'd love to get your thoughts on the refereeing of the final because it was shocking to me, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a joke. I mean, I don't think anyone disagrees. It was a joke. I've never seen Coello so rattled about anything. He just seems like the calmest bloke in the world, and he was so angry at the ref. Yeah, it was. I didn't understand any of his decisions. Two decisions that were horribly wrong. That decision when the music came on towards the end of a point on the tiebreak, that Tapia had already executed a smash, and Chingotto and Galán were never winning that point. And he actually decides to play a let and replay the point. Luckily enough, Chingotto and Galán were like, I don't understand what's going on. We'll award Coello and Tapia the point. Fair play to them. But yeah, I mean, it's just the biggest joke. And then, yeah, regarding the net, I just don't understand it. I understand that refs can make a mistake, but he's literally in line with the net. And also, why? Yeah, I just don't understand it. The ball had clearly gone out por cuadro. Chingotto and Galan were never going to make that ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
You can't
to be honest,
replay the point from there, like surely.
exactly.
It was shocking. I mean, these kind of things, if the sport definitely wants to become more professional, more serious, like they can't happen, these kind of things. I mean, it was just so obvious to everyone.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that make the really good point. Sorry that you make there. Given that paddle's so much in its infancy, even though it's grown really fast and players are obviously developing a lot, there clearly aren't that many judges and refs,
Yeah.
and their level is clearly not matched to the players' level. So hopefully it does develop because my word, Coello and Tapia are two of the nicest blokes out there. To get them rattled is one of the hardest things you can do. People in, well, the refs out in Chile managed to do it when Galan and Lebrón, well, after that, obviously hugely controversial point and final, which actually Coello and Tapia ended up winning. And now this, yeah, just baffled, to be honest.
Yeah. And I mean, fair play for Chingotto and Galán, because I really thought that after that and having 5 match points, losing a tiebreak on the second set, I honestly thought that, okay, that's it. Like mentally they're gone now. They've had all this issue, and yeah, massive fair play to them to really ride it out in the end on in the third set.
I think both of them are really strong mentally. We've seen how many times Galan and Lebrón literally managed to escape from really tough matches when they weren't playing well at all. So Galan's really done it throughout recent years a lot. And Chingotto's just got that warrior mentality where he just doesn't give any point as lost, and he fights and he fights. And you must go out there thinking, I'm playing with Coello, Tapia, and Galan, who are all about 20 centimeters taller than me and can hit the ball 3 times harder than I can ever hit it. And he's playing as well as they are, even better than some of them. So, yeah, it's truly impressive how in a sport you can have that difference in physicality and power, and you can match the other player. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Just imagine then if he had Goya's height,
Well, the thing is, if he had Goya's height, he
he'd
would
lose
not be
some
able
of.
to defend like he does.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He's just like running around the court. The way he defends the double glasses is unbelievable.
Yeah.
When the ball hits the side glass and the back glass really fast, or the back glass and the side glass really fast, and he just turns in like a split second and carves out this perfect like cross court shot 2 centimeters above the net. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and that point where he dived and the volley that he got back, I was like, how did he do that? Honestly.
What a man. And he's also just a lovely bloke.
Yeah,
So yeah, really happy to see him win another tournament.
very much so. And yeah, I'm sure it won't be the last one of Chingalan. I'm sure that they've got plenty of titles ahead of them. But yeah, I think that probably brings us to the end of the episode, Hugo. It's been great to have you as always, and I hope that everyone out there has enjoyed listening to this episode or seeing it. And yeah, please do leave a like, subscribe, and also leave a comment if you did like and enjoy it. And yeah, we welcome any feedback as well. But Hugo, it's great to have you on as always, and we'll catch you next time.
Pleasure as always, Gons. And actually, one last question from me. Quick prediction: who's going to win Seville?
Goya Tapia.
Navarro, Lebrón.
I mean, if they do it in their hometown, then it'd be pretty poetic.
It's probably me wanting them to suddenly do it, as you say, at home with the fans. But if I had to bet my house on something, it would be Coello and Tapia.